finished the classified antiarrhythmic, let's look at the calcium channel blockers. Calcium channel blockers will block the calcium channels that we call L-type in heart tissue. And as they find these channels, their primary effect on electrical activity would have to be on SA and AV node. This is simply because recall that the SA and AV nodal action potential depends primarily on calcium in order to have the upstroke of action potential. That depolarized tissue did not have any help from sodium to allow the phase zero. So in decreasing phase zero of the action potential, on my exam, the effect on the actual action potential should be to decrease the upstroke so that even if everything else was to stay the same, what I'm doing with a class 4 is happily again increase action potential duration, therefore increase refractoriness in those SA and AV nodal cells. There are many different calcium channel blockers drugs out there. We'll see a bunch of them in the antihypertensive chapter, for instance, in the next chapter. We'll see a bunch of them in the chapter on antihypertensive drugs afterwards. The two drugs presented here have this special that they don't work much on the calcium channel of blood vessels. You see, you would not like to block calcium entry in blood vessel, cause hypotension, because then you would run the risk of reflex tachycardias, which would worsen any type of arrhythmia a patient might have. Verapamil and diltiazem have good tropism for cardiac muscle. So as such, they are the only two calcium channel blockers that are FDA approved for treatment of arrhythmias. Slowing AV node protects your ventricle. As explained with the beta blockers, this allows their use as drugs for supraventricular tachycardias. They are very well tolerated. Verapamil, for instance, does cause a little bit of constipation, showing you that the drug does also block calcium channels in your gut, preventing motility. But overall, I think the biggest worrisome type of side effect would be the potential for AV block. If you slow the AV node too much, you could actually block conduction between atria and ventricles and result in the two systems to work independently from each other. This could mess up hemodynamics, as you know, greatly. And if a ventricle starts pumping when it is not filled, then of course a compromised cardiac output could kill that patient. AV block is a worry, particularly when you think of other drugs that could add on their own AV blockade. For instance, classic beta blockers. Well, they also slow AV node. And if they do, given with a calcium channel blocker like verapamil, it's not unheard of to have additive effect and potential AV blockade as a pro-arrhythmic effect. At the very least, what you expect such drug interaction to do is increase the PR interval of your patient. Just make sure that by checking on an EKG, you don't increase it too much. Digoxin would incur the same type of caution with it. The final drug interaction issue would be verapamil displacing digoxin from tissue binding site, a little bit like the story we had with quinidine. It was more relevant of quinidine because we had to digitalize the patient than it is of verapamil, of course. Now, in your notes, you do also see the side effects of dizziness, flushing, hypotension. Those are really the classic side effect of the other calcium channel blockers, the one that we're going to friendly call the dipine drugs, nifedipine being the prototype. These are not drugs that are used as antiarrhythmic, so really you don't have to specially worry about this with drugs like verapamil and diltiazem. It's just to be complete about the calcium channel blocking drugs overall.